Hollywood loves drama on screen, but nothing compares to what was happening off it. The legendary feud between Bette Davis and Joan Crawford wasn't just about clashing personalities. It was deeper, darker, and decades in the making. These weren't just two divas fighting over roles. They were two powerhouses competing for survival in an industry that pit women against each other. Today, we're unpacking the untold truth behind this infamous rivalry. The studio politics, the stolen lovers, the ice-cold insults, and the one film that forced them to work together. You've heard the rumors. Now it's time for the real story, the one Hollywood never wanted you to hear. Bette Davis and Joan Crawford were born for the spotlight, but couldn't have been more different. Joan was a studio-built goddess, all glamour and control. Bette was a raw, emotional powerhouse, fiercely independent and often defiant. Crawford was polished perfection. Davis was raw authenticity. From the start, Hollywood set them up as opposites. Beauty versus talent, elegance versus edge. But it wasn't just the press. They genuinely disliked each other. Bette once said Joan slept with every male star at MGM except Lassie. Joan said Bette was overrated and jealous. Their feud wasn't manufactured. It was real, and it was only just beginning. In 1933, Joan Crawford married French hot tone, an actor Bette Davis had just finished filming with and reportedly fallen in love with. Davis claimed she was madly in love with Tone and devastated when he chose Joan instead. "She stole him from me," Bette once said. Joan didn't deny it and even flaunted their relationship. On set, Tone allegedly arrived to work with marks from Joan's passionate rehearsals the night before. It wasn't just a romantic betrayal, it was a personal humiliation. That emotional wound never healed for Bette. From that moment on, what could have been healthy competition turned into lifelong animosity. Back then, the studio system wasn't just about movies. It controlled stars' public images, private lives, and even rivalries. Warner Bros. Loved the tension between Davis and Crawford. It kept both stars in the headlines and fans glued to their films. Publicists subtly fed stories to gossip columns. Tabloids painted every award, dress, or casting as a battle. Behind closed doors, executives used their rivalry to negotiate salaries and boost ticket sales. They weaponized female ambition for box office gain. Davis and Crawford weren't just victims of each other, they were victims of a system that thrived on turning women into enemies. While Davis built her career with fierce performances in films like Jezebel and Dark Victory, Crawford was raking in headlines, fashion deals, and A-list romances. Crawford had a mansion, a Pepsi-Cola fortune, and tabloid power. Davis had Oscars, but not the same lifestyle. That imbalance burned Bette. She saw Joan as all surface, no substance. Joan Crawford is a star. Davis famously said, "I am an actress." Crawford fired back, saying Davis was bitter and mean-spirited. The public picked sides, but behind the scenes, the jealousy was mutual. Crawford envied Davis's talent. Davis envied Crawford's control. That tension was always simmering, waiting to explode. In 1963, the Oscars became a battlefield. Bette Davis was nominated for Whatever Happened to Baby Jane? Joan Crawford wasn't, even though she co-starred in the film. Crawford, furious, offered to accept the award on behalf of any other nominee who couldn't attend. When Anne Bancroft won, Crawford strutted on stage in full glamour, took the statue, and posed for photos while Davis seethed backstage. Davis called it a calculated humiliation. Crawford called it just business. That moment wasn't just petty, it was nuclear. Their personal feud had exploded onto the biggest stage in Hollywood, and neither would forgive the other. On the set of Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, their rivalry turned into open warfare. Davis allegedly had a Coca-Cola machine installed on set, knowing Crawford's late husband had been Pepsi's CEO. Crawford filled her pockets with weights during a scene where Davis had to drag her, causing Bette to injure her back. Davis supposedly responded by actually kicking Joan during a take. The tension was so toxic, even crew members were forced to pick sides. It wasn't just acting, it was psychological warfare. Yet somehow, all that real hate made their performances unforgettable. The bitterness made the film iconic. Hollywood gossip columns lived for the Davis-Crawford feud. Hedda Hopper, Luella Parsons, and other big names in celebrity journalism printed every glare, every insult, every rumor. But they didn't just report it, they amplified it. Even when Davis and Crawford tried to move on, the media dragged them back into the ring. Articles pitted them against each other over fashion, film roles, and men. False stories were planted. Misquotes became headlines. Their feud became public entertainment. The press didn't just cover the fire, they kept it burning. And both women knew that walking away would mean losing power. Despite all the insults and games, there were moments, quiet, rare, when the hate cracked. After Crawford's death in 1977, Davis was asked to comment. She famously replied, "You should never say bad things about the dead, only good. Joan Crawford is dead. Good." But later, in private letters, Davis acknowledged Joan's endurance. She admitted that, in a way, they had pushed each other, made each other better. The rivalry, for all its venom, had meaning. That admission didn't erase the history, but it proved that behind all the bitterness, there was a flicker of respect that never quite died. While Davis and Crawford fought each other, the studios and press cashed in. Their feud sold tickets, magazines, and eventually TV rights. Whatever happened to Baby Jane became a massive hit, in part because people wanted to see the tension play out. But while Hollywood reaped the rewards, Davis and Crawford carried the emotional fallout. Both struggled with aging in a youth-obsessed industry. Both had strained relationships with their children, and both were often reduced to caricatures. The real cost of their rivalry wasn't bruised egos. It was isolation, bitterness, and being remembered more for the feud than their films. The feud didn't die with Bette and Joan. Their daughters, B.D. Hyman and Christina Crawford, each published explosive books about their mothers. Christina's Mommy Dearest portrayed Crawford as abusive, cold, and obsessed with image. B.D.'s My Mother's Keeper painted Davis as controlling and emotionally erratic. Critics questioned the motives behind both books, but they added new fuel to the rivalry. It wasn't just about film roles anymore. It was about family, legacy, and truth. These books cast shadows that still follow their names today, turning a Hollywood feud into something much more personal and much more painful. At its core, the Davis-Crawford feud wasn't just about two stars. It was about how Hollywood pits women against each other. Roles were scarce, respect was conditional, and aging meant invisibility. These women weren't just fighting for attention. They were fighting for survival in a system designed to make them rivals. The industry loved to glamorize their hatred, but ignored the pressure it placed on them. Davis and Crawford weren't enemies by nature. They were icons forced into a conflict neither could afford to lose. In a different era, they might have been allies. But in Golden Age Hollywood, there could only be one queen. Decades later, we're still obsessed with the Davis-Crawford feud. It's been turned into books, documentaries, and even a hit miniseries. But why does it still resonate? Because it wasn't just celebrity gossip. It was power, vulnerability, and ambition wrapped in sequins and side eyes. It was two women refusing to back down in a world built to silence them. Their rivalry was messy, yes, but it was also bold, unapologetic, human, and maybe, deep down, we see pieces of ourselves in their fight. For respect, for space, for legacy. That's why their feud still echoes, not because it was petty, but because it was real. Bette Davis and Joan Crawford didn't just feud, they made history. Behind the headlines was pain, pressure, and a battle for survival in a system that played them like chess pieces. But they left behind more than insults. They left behind unforgettable work, unmatched courage, and a rivalry that told the truth about old Hollywood. If this story made you see them in a new light, like, comment, and subscribe to Silver Screen Secrets. We tell the stories behind the stars, the ones that never made it to the screen. Until next time, keep watching and keep questioning what Hollywood left out.